So then he came to Louisiana Tech, which was not Louisiana Tech, it was Louisiana Polytechnic Institute at the time. A lot of these details were very interesting because I grew up only knowing Louisiana Tech and Northwestern, not these interesting names that no one uses anymore. But I won't go too much into like the season by season. It's in the book, but he was very successful. They won the Gulf States Conference in 1955, 59, and one more time in 64, or excuse me. They won more championships, but those were the only times that they almost had an undefeated football season.
Chris, take a drink of water. That'll help that.
Appreciate it. (1955, 1959, 1964), they were almost undefeated. It was 9-1 those 3 seasons. But again, I won't go too much into that. It's in the book. But he was very friendly with Ruston High School's coach Hoss Garrett, L.J. Hoss Garrett. They had a very good relationship, and a lot of the backbone of IA's teams came from Ruston High School. And some of the players, for instance, were the Hinton brothers, Pat Hinton, Tom Hinton, and their cousin Joe Hinton. Tom Hinton would go on to play Canadian League football and have a very successful career with the British Columbia Lions. And these guys formed the core of IA's teams because at the time they could not recruit anyone they wanted to. They didn't have the resources that a lot of teams have today, and also legally the Gulf States Conference could not recruit players outside of the state. So teams like LSU and Tulane could go, big time football, but Louisiana Tech could not do that. So I think it's a big testament to the community here that he was able to work with what he had, and what he had was very good, and they were very successful.
And one of them is in this room.
Yes, ma'am. And so one more thing that I would like to mention about Hoss Garrett and Coach Aya's friendship. They remained friends, but personality-wise and coaching-wise, they were very different. Garrett was a lot more outgoing. Aya was much more reserved. And in coaching, Aya was not like your typical football coach that you would think of, like yelling and he was passionate, but it did not come out like yelling and cussing in practice and what you see on TV, like in games, like throwing things and stuff. That wasn't his style. He was very reserved, and he would talk to people. He would not yell at them in practice or in games. It could be that they fell behind in a game, or maybe someone caused a turnover, or any number of reasons that you would get upset. He would not do that. And he would calm down other players and even some of his own coaches that would get unwound and start getting upset and yelling, but he would go to them and calm them down. But the best I could compare the two would be Coach Aya was like Tom Landry of the Dallas Cowboys, he was very stoic, very well dressed, and very, very much like his friend Aya. The two had a very good relationship, and some of Louisiana Tech's players would eventually get recruited by the Cowboys. While Hoss Garrett, I would compare him to Vince Lombardi because the two were very passionate and very much boisterous, and there was no guessing how they felt at any given time. And again, I would very much like to thank the people that I communicated with for the book, because they added just that just that little extra to it that really fleshes it out, because I got a lot of information from researching, for instance, the Daily Leader, Ruston Daily Leader, and other newspapers from this area, and archives from Louisiana Tech and at Holy Cross and St. Edward's. But if I did not get to talk to these people, there would be several holes that would remain unfilled. And one of them is here tonight. His name's Don Tippett, and you'll see some of his excerpts in the book. And I hope you enjoy. I hope you enjoy those those moments. And I will say too that A.L. Williams was here earlier, but he went to go to the Ruston High football game, and I can't say I blame him too much. It's supposed to be a good one. And I'm a Ruston High alumni, so I'm supposed to pull for the Bearcats, and I'm doing that here, just not over there. So I guess I'm open now to questions, if anyone has any questions.
Who succeeded Coach Lambright?
Yes, Maxie Lambright succeeded
Did
Aya.
he play for Coach Aya himself?
No, Lambright played at Southern Miss, and that's actually where he was coaching before he was called to coach here at Louisiana Tech.
And that was in approximately, when, 70?
So Aya retired from coaching football in 1966. He stayed here at Louisiana Tech until 1970 as athletic director and as golf coach. And that was another sport that he was very successful in coaching. He won 11 championships, Gulf States Conference championships, coaching golf. And Roy Pace is the only, Louisiana Tech's only professional golfer, and he played under Aya.
How large a family did Aya have? I knew he had several children.
Right, he was married to Ruby Como Aya, and they had 3 children. They had Robert Aya, Cynthia Aya, and Richard Aya. And I was very fortunate to talk to Cynthia Aya. She was very helpful, and the book would not be written without her. I did not get a chance to talk to Robert Aya. He was in poor health.
He was known as Bobby.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you ever get a chance to talk to Bobby before he died?
I talked to him, but he was not able to help with the book because he was in very poor health.
Yeah.
They had a program on the orphan train a number of years back that was presented at the library, and Cynthia was there talking about her father.
I came across some of her notes from that.
I would like to say this because it fascinates me. Dr. H.J. Tony Sachs was head of the English department for many years, and he was there and on the athletic council when Coach IA was hired, you know. And when the IAs moved to town, Dr. Sachs went to meet him, to greet him and all, and welcome him to Tech. He went to the door, and Coach IA was at the piano playing the piano, and it was opera type music. And when that just amazed me. He loved opera, according to him telling Dr. Sachs, and Dr. Sachs's son.
That was a lifelong friendship.
Yes, indeed.
Right. IA was very intellectual, and again, not very common for football coaches. He sang very well. Maybe I should change that to intellectual, scholarly wise, because there are several coaches that are quite intellectual football wise. But
What age was he when they put him on the orphan train?
2.5 years old.
Wow.
And didn't a priest want to take him first?
Well, the way it worked out, the IA family adopted him, but the priest, Father Johann Roge of Youngsville, he had traveled to the family hospital previously, and he came across IA when he was there as a little child, and it was through him that the IAs adopted.
I think she was the housekeeper for the priest, whatever you call it.
Correct. And this is something that I came across in several stories that are out there about Joe IA and the orphan train, but it's not exactly true. The priest did not adopt him. The priest did not. It was the IA family through the priest.
He married.
And IA's father was alive at the time, but then 2 years after he was adopted, he died. But the stories that I've come across, they kind of don't really get it that way.
Did he grow up in Youngsville or Opelousas?
At Youngsville.
At Youngsville. Oh, there's nothing at Youngsville.
Was that where Mrs. Ruby IA grew up also? Come on.
I have not been able to determine where. Ruby Como grew up in Lafayette, but I don't know exactly where.
Yeah, that's,
Close.
yeah.
And at 12 years old, he went to Holy Cross when it was still a boarding school, so he was all over the place.
Who paid for the boarding school? Was his mother wealthy?
That's how I understood. Yes, sir.
Wasn't he responsible for starting the Catholic Church here?
Yeah.
And he was
Yes.
one of
Yeah.
For starting what?
the Catholic Church.
Oh, yeah, here in Ruston.
He
His wife, didn't Ruby start the infamous
gumbo supper.
Was the delight of Ruston.
Did she leave the recipe for him?
Yeah, she did.
I tried to get a hold of that recipe.
I have the recipe. If anyone wants the recipe, just let me know. I can.
I missed the annual room a long time.
We ran out of people to do it.
And also, Coach IA grew up speaking French, of course, down there in South Louisiana. But he did not want his children speaking, because at the time it was not encouraged to speak French. And I had several conversations with Cynthia about that, where she would speak French and her family members would threaten to tattle on her to her dad and get her in trouble, which is kind of interesting now, because now we're supposed to learn Spanish and other languages.
Did you get a chance to talk to E.J. Lewis, or was he passed away by that time?
I did, and
E.J. used to tell me stories about Coach IA and he.
Chris, are any of his adopted family still living?
you mean like his siblings?
No, the people that adopted him.
The
The
IA
IAs.
family down there, down south.
I haven't come across any. But they did originate from Bruley, or at least like Joseph Numa, Mr. IA. So there could be some IAs in Bruley, which that's a little town right outside of Baton Rouge.
Are you familiar with the U.S. Marine team during World War II?
Yes, that was comprised of athletes from different colleges that were in the U-12 program.
Yeah.
Correct.
I don't remember what year it was. I know there were some years during World War II where there was no football team, but there was one year where virtually every player on the team was a United States Marine at Louisiana Tech getting their officer candidate training to become officers.
I believe that's 1944 and 45, because 43 they didn't have a football team.
Well, could you talk a little bit about some of the things that the IA did during World War II?
Right. He was a part of the USO organization, the United Services Organization, and through that he showed film as entertainment for the soldiers, and he already had experience showing film with football, not just to his players but also to the public, and he was a first lieutenant in the Louisiana State Home Guard, which that's basically one of the last instances of state militia. It's unlike the National Guard, which can be federalized and sent to the front line. This was under direct control of the governor of Louisiana. And since Louisiana Tech did not have a football team in 1943, he could devote most of his time to that. But when they started football again in 1944, he was doing basically both at the same time.
Did he have any contact with the POW camp? The German POW in any way?
I'm sure, but I wasn't able to make it clear.
I'm wondering if he had contact with Chenault when he came through here, with the,
With the
training.
French connection as well. Their French background.
Possibly, yeah.
Do you have any more leads you're gonna follow up, Chris, with the IA biography? Do you have any other plans or?
I'm not exactly sure, but there's other Louisiana Tech prominent sports figures from when he was at Louisiana Tech that I would like to write on, and I think I'll find more through them.
Thank you.
And there's one other World War II thing that IA was a part of. He had 22 athletes that were drafted into the war, and he communicated with them while they were overseas, writing letters back and forth to them, and also they kept their scholarships while they were overseas.
When they returned, he gave them their scholarship. Yeah.
And his scholarship program was unorthodox because it wasn't a scholarship for 1 year or 2 year or 4 years, whatever. It was until you graduated. So some athletes, it might have took them 5 years, but even if they weren't eligible football-wise, if they were still going to school, they kept their scholarship.
My comment is, how many here in this room actually met the man? How many in this room, if he were to walk in, would know your name? All right, now the reason why I'm asking this, in this day and age, everybody's in the modern sports world, they're all concerned about their legacies. I don't know this man, but there's a football stadium named after him, and he sowed his spirit into generations that he is a legacy. So if anybody wants to talk, my question to you is, what was so magnanimous about the medal of the man that you think that motivated him?
I don't know, but he and my dad served on the athletic council, and they were very good friends. And he thought the world of Joe I.
But you understand what I'm saying? This guy, obviously, you were drawn to him as a moth to the light because he was obviously sincere. I don't know.
I have never heard one negative comment about Coach I.
He was honest, he was true and honest, you could depend on his word.
That's good.
Don is that former player that under Coach I that's here.
And I would say too that the Catholic Church, I think, played a big role in his life because starting from the New York Family Hospital to the orphan train to Father Rogue in Youngsville to Holy Cross, New Orleans, and also St. Edward's, he spent a lot of time with.
Well, and what I'm hearing you say, it wasn't just a belief system, it was a way of life.
Basically, yes, sir.
When did he die?
71.
71?
It was right after he retired from athletic director and golf coach.
Right after Don got there. Yeah.
Wasn't his middle name Roger in the name?
Right, they named him after, well, his middle name, after the priest, Rogue. He did not know, but that was his design as soon as he got to Louisiana Tech, that we need to have a bigger stadium, because the stadium at the time is where A.E. Phillips is currently at. And I can say, as someone who it's amazing to think that the playground that I ran on and played on was where they played football. And there's an interesting story about the namesake of A.E. Phillips.
Chris, I don't know if you heard, but there's a monument or a statue in the making for Coach I.
The North End Zone Project.
He was revered. He wasn't just respected. He was revered.
Yeah, yeah.
And he deserved it.
A.E. Phillips, he was in 1940, he was the professor of education at Louisiana Tech. But at one of the football games, I came across this in my research, and it unfortunately was edited out of the book. But A.E. Phillips was at a football game with his wife and had a heart attack and actually died as Tech won the football game, and all the fans are standing up around him cheering. And I don't know, it kind of means a lot to me since I went to A.E. Phillips and just Louisiana Tech. I never heard that story. I never heard anything about A.E. Phillips, just like Joe Aye. So who knows? Maybe Phillips needs a story written about him too.
You good?
I think so.
Well, Christopher, we want to thank Christopher for showing up here tonight. You're all welcome to stick around for a while. Thank you so much for coming out and be signing books as well. And again, 2 kinds of water for those. We have room temperature and cold. If you want it, please let me know. The next event that's coming up, please friend us up on Facebook because that's where we have an information to get out, is going to be November 10th, and it's Lee Aber. He did a video called Something Nobody Else Has, the story of turtle trapping in Louisiana in the year 1984, and the grant came through the Lincoln Parish Museum and Historical Society, and it won awards on PBS, it won awards on the BBC, it was shown down in the New Orleans World's Fair in 1984, so he'll be standing here. We'll watch the video. It's only 29 minutes. It just so happens Jacques Cousteau was down in New Orleans, so we got an interview with Jacques Cousteau. Also got an interview with Paul Prudhomme. So that's going to be on November 10th. But in the meantime, what happened to her?
Come in.
They went back out.
Anyway, well, thank you all so much for coming out, and enjoy yourself. And Christopher, thank you so much for all that you did, man. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Glad to.
Yeah. You did good.